One of the biggest lessons I've learned about money is that getting rich and staying rich are two completely different skills. Some people are really good at making money but terrible at keeping it. And then other people are great at protecting money but never learn how to make it. If you want long-term wealth, you need to understand both of these. Welcome back to the channel. On this channel, we talk about going from the civic stage of your life to the Lamborghini stage of life. Not just financially, but in terms of freedom. And today, I want to talk about something that most people never even think about. The difference between getting rich and staying rich. So let's talk about getting rich. So getting rich usually requires a few different traits. You have to take risk, you have to try things, you have to be okay with failing, you have to learn how to experiment, and you have to learn how to put yourself in situations where you might fail. This is why many entrepreneurs, creators, and investors are able to build wealth. It's because they're willing to take calculated risk, and getting rich often comes from things like starting businesses, building content, investing aggressively, and taking opportunities. But I will say that once someone becomes wealthy, the strategy actually changes after that. So let's talk about getting rich real quick. I'll give you an example of getting rich. So somebody who makes a tremendous amount of income, say for example somebody who can make $250,000 in income every single year. Somebody who can make that income is obviously greatly talented. It's very, very difficult to do that. And then the traits you need to kind of get to that point is a little bit of impatience, because you're obviously trying to push yourself to get really, really far in life or build up your income. So say, for example, somebody probably studied college for a good 10 years or so, and then they did a really good job of building out their income. But then let me throw a curveball at that. Say, for example, somebody makes that 250 grand a year, but then they also spend 260 grand a year. So what just happened? They're negative $10,000 for that year, because say for example somebody makes that income, but then they're living in Manhattan, New York, where rent can be $5,000 a month, food costs can be $2,500 a month or whatever, and then they like to live a lavish lifestyle where they like to travel first class every single place they go, or they like to spend on a big old house that they can barely afford but not have enough for savings. So those latter purchases require a different level of discipline. I like to see it as offense and defense. If you're somebody who can make a lot of income, that means you're really good offensively. But if you're somebody who also likes to spend all that income, then you're doing a poor job on your defense in terms of saving your money and multiplying it. So let's talk about actually staying rich. And a big example throughout this whole thing is going to be, say for example, somebody winning the lottery. They win the lottery, they have $1 million in their bank account, but that's just part one of the whole process. The second challenge that they're going to have to face is actually how to maintain that and how to use that $1 million wisely. Staying rich requires a completely different mindset. So instead of focusing on taking big risk, you have to start focusing on protecting or playing defense on whatever you already have. And what this means is managing your spending, diversifying your investments, avoiding unnecessary risk, and protecting your income streams. So getting rich requires offense, but staying rich requires defense. So let's go back to that lottery example, and I'm pretty sure that many of you who watch videos like this already have a good idea. Say for example, you're a average Joe, you are completely living paycheck to paycheck, you're barely just getting by, you go to the gas station, you get a lottery ticket, you win big, you get $1 million. Congratulations. That $1 million goes into your bank account. But then say for example the next day comes and then you think to yourself, oh, I got this $1 million now I can do whatever I want. I will say that getting money is the hard part, but spending money is the easy, sneaky, dangerous part, because anybody who has $1 million and doesn't really know what to do with it can lose it with the snap of a finger. I'll give you an example. Say for example I have $1 million, and then what I do next is I go to the Lamborghini store and then I go buy a $1 million Lamborghini Aventador SVJ. That car right now is going for $1 million. And then I go there, I go spend that $1 million, I buy the car in cash, I have no payments, and then now I have a SVJ in my driveway. But here's the catch. I just spent that $1 million, and then now I have to pay for things like gas. I have to pay for things like where I live, my house or rent. One of the parts on the SVJ that costs us $20,000 just broke. Well, now I have no money in my account, and then now I officially can't afford the car, and I'm broke again. Many people would actually ask, what would be the correct way to go about this? I'll give you an example of what I would do if I had $1 million in my bank account overnight. What I would do is I would take that $1 million, I would put it into a dividend stock or a dividend ETF. If you don't know what that is, it's like a stock that you put your money into and then it pays you monthly in small amounts throughout the rest of your life. They also have this new product called covered call ETFs, such as JEPI or JEPQ. If you don't know about those, definitely go look at those because it may be something that you could use to retire with 10-15 years down the road. I would take that $1 million, I would put it into a covered call ETF such as JEPI or JEPQ, and then what that will do is pay me 10% throughout the whole year, but it would pay me that 10% or 12% every single month. So what does that mean? Because I have $1 million into one of those two different funds, that means that I'm going to be getting $10,000 every single month, doing absolutely nothing. What I would focus on is setting up that system first, because now I basically just set myself up to never run out of money. I can live off $10,000 every single month. If I wanted to get a SVJ, what I could do now is start saving for using that passive income that I'm getting every single month. But basically you could do the math. Because I have my $1 million in that product, I'm getting $10,000 every single month, which means I'm getting $120,000 every single year, doing absolutely nothing. And obviously somebody who is completely broke can easily live off that $10,000 a month, and then they can start doing some stuff with it, such as buying more stock, which eventually multiplies your initial $1 million investment into $2 million, $3 million as time progresses through. You get the point, but all that requires discipline. So what the defense portion of this whole thing is having discipline. You don't just go out there, blow your money, and then you're broke the next day again. You take that $1 million, you put it into investments that continue to pay you over time, little bit by little bit. So say for example, if your $1 million was a cow, you take that $1 million, you go buy a cow, which is a stock or ETF, and then now you're just collecting the milk that it drips or that it produces, which isn't a lot, but that money that you're getting in drips little bit by little bit, that's the money that you can live off with and never have to do anything for the rest of your life. But we'll often see it with athletes or celebrities. They make millions of dollars, but because they never learn how to manage it or play defense with it, their wealth will eventually lose it. It's not because they couldn't make money, it's because they didn't know how to keep it. So for me, learning this difference changed the way that I look at money completely. In the early stages of my life, I focused on creating income, building things, trying things, taking risk. But once the income system started working, you also have to think about protecting the money that you're getting, because building the wealth is only half of the battle. Keeping it is the other half. People who build long-term wealth usually understand both sides. They know when to take risk, but then they also know when to hang back and play defense. And then they know how to protect whatever they built. So that's the balance that you need to have in order to have lasting financial freedom. So getting rich might get you the Lamborghini stage of life, but staying rich is what keeps you there. Let me know if y'all had any questions. I respond back to every question and do a video on it. Subscribe to the channel, and I will see you all for the next one.